And we absolutely have to get that back. We're in a war, Oliver. We're in a war. Many people don't seem to get it.
All right, Brad, thanks for joining us today.
Good to be with you again, Oliver.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming in and giving us an update on your campaign.
Yeah, well, the campaign's going well. I think I put a post out just recently. Maybe you saw it, but we turned in our nomination petition signatures last Monday, and we made a post. We've been to 300. Actually, it was a little before 300 then, but now we're over 300 meetings that we've been to, and we've been in all 99 counties, and we turned in 9,300 and some signatures. So, and we went through all of our signatures. We combed out all the duplicates, and we did not count the cities that were abbreviated just in case. We just wanted to make sure we're good. So we had the minimum is 3,500, and we had, like I say, 9,500, almost 9,300 and something.
That's a lot of signatures.
It is, and then we also have to have 19 different counties with over 100 signatures, but we had 30 counties with 100 or more. So anyway, we got that one behind us. It feels good to get that part of it done. So we're official now. We're on the ballot, and looking forward to the primary.
That's great. Before we dive into what you've been up to these last months, I know you know that I've gotten to know your son, Ben, a little better.
Right.
I mean, we've spent a lot of time together recently because he's the co-chair of our county party, and he was the caucus to convention chair, and I've just been so impressed with him. And he gave a speech for you at our convention, and my wife was really impressed that he talked about his childhood growing up. I don't know if he happened to share the speech with you, but it was pretty powerful. And he said something. He said freedom, liberty, selfless service, unalienable rights given by God. These weren't just concepts studied in school, but lived and breathed in my home. And that had a big impact on me. And I just wondered, how intentional were you about raising your kids with that kind of grounding in American history and faith?
Well, first off, thanks for reporting that back to me. I mean, I'd heard a little bit, but I hadn't heard exactly what he said. Yeah, he told me that he didn't use the speech I sent out.
That doesn't surprise me now that I've gotten to know him.
He made his own, but I think it's obviously intentional because it's what I live. I've started this campaign off saying that our slogan is restoring the foundations of freedom, and that's not just something we came up with for the campaign. That's something that has been my heartbeat for 4 decades or more. And so I guess I don't think about it every day. As I was raising my children, I didn't think about it every day, but I guess we do live it because we believe it. And I've been involved with grassroots work for 4 decades, trying to teach people these foundations. And so I guess we do. I appreciate hearing what he said because we do live it and breathe it. I know many times just in a routine meeting, when we say the pledge to the flag, for years, I sometimes just feel emotional.
Yeah.
Because I understand our country. I understand God's hand in the formation of our country. And these things have meant a lot to me over the years, thinking about how the sacrifice that was made and the beliefs of the founding fathers and how they resonate in my heart. So all kinds of things go off in my head when we say the pledge or do other patriotic things.
Yeah, definitely. And I know you raised your kids in a pretty progressive college town, but they came out deeply patriotic and grounded in those conservative principles. How did you navigate raising kids with those values in that kind of environment?
Yeah, well, we did a little bit of homeschooling, not much. That's a big challenge. I certainly honor the people that do that, but we did send our kids to a small Christian school, which was almost like a homeschool. It was a 1-room school. They eventually had 2 rooms, but the grades were mixed together, and they went through the 8th grade in that school, and they had a good, solid Christian-based curriculum in that. So I have to give a lot of credit to that as well. And then, of course, when they graduated 8th grade, they went into high school, went into West High there in Iowa City, but by then they were pretty prepared to to stand against the other views that they encountered. And so, there's always challenges raising kids. I think everybody knows that.
Oh, yeah.
But all 4 of our children have turned out to be solid, patriotic type people. So,
Yep. And he also described you as wearing a lot of hats: pastor, tradesman, legislator, activist. So which of those experiences really shaped your form of leadership?
Well, I've done a lot of things. I grew up operating heavy equipment. I think we've talked about that before. I was a dozer and dragline guy. I grew up on equipment. My dad had equipment. We did farm drainage work. I always make the joke about drainage ditches, which makes me a literally having swamp draining experience. And so I was, but that's the kind of the blue collar work. I grew up doing that and was a heavy equipment mechanic for a while. And then we went into ministry training. And when I surrendered my life to Jesus, and I emphasize the word surrender, it wasn't just a religious experience. I had plenty of religious experiences growing up, but this was a surrender, a full-fledged surrender to him. And, which happened to be the same night that I met my wife. Well,
wait a minute. How did that happen? I mean, can you take us there? I mean, same night you met your wife, you gave your life to Jesus. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Well, I had grown up in church, and then I walked away from religious life, as many teenagers do. And then I graduated high school, and I went to just off on my own, and pretty much had my conscience subdued. And then a person just began talking to me about Jesus. I was working on my car in a barn, putting a new engine in my car, and this guy rode up on a horse and started preaching to us.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And he awakened my conscience, and so we went.
Do you remember what he said?
Just asking us if we ever surrendered our life to Jesus. He was just telling us that that's what we needed to do.
Wow.
And of course, having grown up in church, I down deep in my heart, I knew he was right, but I didn't want to, I had my conscience, like I said, subdued. So for him to talk about that was very uncomfortable. But he awakened me, and my friends and I, we started talking about how, we were just being honest with one another. We gave religion another try. It didn't work out. Lasted about a month or so or less. But then, I don't know, I just came to a point where I realized I just was going nowhere in my life. And the same friend invited me to a church meeting, small country church. And that night, the preacher preached, and he was very enthusiastic. And when he gave an invitation for anybody that wanted to surrender their lives, I didn't hesitate because I knew it was time to make a decision. And I based it on 2 simple logical facts. One is that God's smarter than I am, by a long shot.
Right.
No question about that.
Right.
He created the worlds we live in, so I had no trouble believing that. And secondly, he loves me so much that he became a man, took on the form of a man, humbled himself as Jesus Christ, and died to pay the price for our sins. So he loves me so much that he would do that. So if somebody that smart loves me that much, it makes sense to me that if I let him run my life, it's going to be better for me than it would be if I tried to run it myself.
Right.
So that's the night I surrendered my life. And my wife was playing in a little music group at the church that night. And that's the night I met her. And we got married 5 months later because her dad wouldn't let us get married sooner.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So,
so that was an added bonus.
Yeah. That's the night everything turned around. So,
yeah. I've met her as well. She's amazing.
Yeah.
Yep.
But where were we there?
Oh, I don't know. I had to stop you because I wanted to hear about that moment. I think that's always a powerful moment that somebody comes to. I've never heard somebody rode up on a horse and started preaching to me, though.
Well, that's what happened. Yeah, I was putting a 1969 Z28 302 engine in my 56 Chevy.
Oh, wow. So are you a car guy?
Oh, yeah. Well, I used to be. I used to love working on cars and doing hot rodding, but,
yeah.
the 1969 Z28 engine is a classic. If I
Right.
had just that engine block today, it would be worth hard telling what.
Really?
Yeah. So,
Really?
but anyway, I grew up, doing that and just a lot of blue collar type work, and then went into ministry training, and then when that turnaround happened, that's when I started to care about history. It was just something God put there, I guess, because the Bible is really history. It's a history book of God's interaction with man. And so everything started just coming alive at that point. And then we went into ministry training, finished that, was ordained in 1979, moved to Iowa City in 1981, and started a church at the University of Iowa campus. And so during those 45 years, I've been a pastor in the Iowa City area. I've done several things: home building and real estate development. I've been active politically, county chair, grassroots work, caucuses, conventions, etc. The pro-life work was a big part of that. We was a co-founder and board chair for Informed Choice Medical Clinic. We had a few medical clinics around the state, 5 or 6, doing pro-life work. And helping with some presidential campaigns, all the way back to Pat Robertson, actually, and then Mike Huckabee, Michelle Bachmann, and then helped with President Trump's campaign.
Wow.
In a way I could. So, and I think the grassroots experience and just being involved is one of the things that sets me apart. And I think in this race is just the level of experience I've had, in those areas.
What led you to run for the Iowa House?
Well, I think medical freedom was a big part of it.
Right.
I saw what happened during COVID. We also had a representative that was not voting, who was a Republican, but not voting for life. So I was seriously considering challenging that person. Then the redistricting came, and in my district, we had no incumbent, as it turned out, with the lines the way they were drawn. And so with no incumbent, I got in early. I decided, okay, I'm going to do this. I got in early and thought, well, maybe no one else will run, because campaigning, I didn't know much about it at that point. And but turns out we had 5 others that get in the race, so we had a 6-way primary in that House race.
Wow.
Yeah, the most in the state. I think there was another race in the state that had 5 in it. But so everyone thought that race would go to a convention, because who's going to get 35% when you got 6, splitting it up 6 ways,
Sure.
But I won that race with 55.5%.
Okay.
Closest person had 13%. So I learned
you have
something.
to have, what percentage do you have to have?
35%. Yeah.
35%.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I learned that hard work gets it done, and so
Yep.
that's what we're doing in this race as well, working hard, reaching out, touching people face to face.
And you served 1 term in the House, is that
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And I probably would have run again, except our daughter passed away and we had made plans to move to a different district. And so anyway.
Yeah. And I'm sure that had a big impact on your family.
It did. It turned our world upside down. I don't think that's something anybody that's ever lost a child knows. You don't get over that.
Yeah.
But it changes you. I don't know how to describe it other than the fact that it brings a certain crushing. It brings the reality of eternity into focus. It makes the things of this world seem way less important, and also helps define what things are important. So as a result of that, we made plans to move. As I mentioned, long story short, those plans didn't work out, so we didn't move. But in that process, we just didn't feel like we were finished politically.
Right.
It felt like Satan, the enemy, had stolen our daughter from us somehow. I'm not sure how yet, but
right.
He is the thief. He's the one that steals, kills, and destroys. So I don't blame God for it. I blame Satan for it.
Right.
And there's still a lot I don't understand, but that's my base level.
Sure. And you have grandkids.
Yep. We had, altogether, we have 4 children and 13 grandchildren. And
wow.
My daughter, who passed away, has 4 children. So, but it was in that process that we started feeling like we weren't finished. And so we started praying about it, and God confirmed it many, many ways. that this is what we're supposed to do, to the point that I've never been more confident about any decision we've ever made.
And you decided to run for governor before Governor Reynolds announced she wasn't going to run.
That's right. And so in I guess it would be 24, early in the, maybe summer of 24, or maybe in the spring of 24, I guess, is when I started feeling pretty confident. A lot of these confirmations were happening. And then in November of 24, after President Trump was reelected, that's when I called Governor Reynolds and told her that, I just felt like it was the right thing to do, to let her know that this is what God was leading me, and I felt like I had to do this to obey God. I wasn't sure about her plans, but this is what I felt like God's plans were for me. So she said, yeah. I told her it was an awkward call to make because I didn't know her plan. She said, yeah, I'll bet it was an awkward call. But that's the short story and how we got to this point. And so that was November 24, and then we announced our campaign officially announced it in February of 25, and then Governor Reynolds announced that she would not be seeking re-election in April after the fact. So I'm the only guy that got in the race ahead of time, and everyone else got in afterwards. And when she said she wasn't going to seek re-election, it made me look like I knew what I was doing.
Right. We have a deep bench and coming up here for the primary. I believe probably at least 4 of them I've heard they felt called by God, and we always, we feel that call, and whether we don't know what the outcome's going to be, we just know that we're called to do something. What do you think about that? It just kind of struck me because I've interviewed a couple other legislators and gubernatorial candidates, and I've got another one on the schedule. When God calls multiple individuals to do the same thing, I mean, obviously God has a plan that we can't comprehend, but I think it's interesting that there's that feeling or that idea from multiple people.
Yeah. I don't know what to say about that.
What do you think about that?
I mean, God could certainly tell people to run.
Right.
And, and just from my human perspective, I think primaries are very good.
Yeah.
I mentioned my house race. I wondered if there would be anyone get in. Well, when we had a 6-way race, I'll tell you what that did for me. It made me work hard. It made me learn about campaigning. It made me think the issues through deeper. And just this, and then in this primary election here for governor, it has, it has really sharpened me a lot to deal with the other issues that come up and all the questions and listening to the other candidates. I mean, I've probably listened, being in the same meetings with forums and everything, I've probably heard the other candidates as much or more than most people. And so I get the opportunity to analyze what they've said and compare it to what they said before and what have you, and on probably a deeper level than most people out there. And so I form certain opinions. But when it comes to judging whether they've heard from God or not, that's not my place.
Right.
That's just not my place at all. And, so God could tell multiple people to run, and the end purpose would be so that we all get sharper and better.
Yeah.
And how it turns out, we'll wait and see.
Well, and I felt that way with my Iowa House race. I didn't win, but I worked hard, and I got to know the people in my county at their door. And I felt like the experience really made me grow. It made me appreciate what our legislators are doing, the work it takes to run. And ultimately, it's led me to run for supervisor. Mm-hmm. And I got to know, what the people want and what they need and what their concerns are. And, I think that, like you just said, it makes you sharper,
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I can say for a fact, this whole campaigning thing, it's a school all of its own. I mean, you learn things that you would never learn otherwise.
Yeah. What are some of the most important things you've learned, do you think?
Oh boy, that's a good question. I just, you learn how to stay awake when you're driving late at night. I'll tell you that.
Right.
I chew gum, drink energy drinks, and have coffee. But that's a good one. I'd like to think that through and maybe make a list sometime. But you just have to. It makes you have a tougher skin, a thicker skin.
Right.
You just can't let things bother you. But I'm mainly, I guess, I was just thinking about the issues that you just have to think them through deeper. And
what
then,
have you learned about the issues that have deepened your understanding for why you're running and what your platform is and those things?
yeah. Well, my issues are primarily, well, first off, it's in general, it's restoring the foundations of freedom. That's our slogan. I already mentioned that how that's been my heartbeat for decades.
Right.
But then it makes you think deeper about, okay, well, how do you do that? And then of course the next level is primarily based on what's in the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, and they're endowed by the Creator with certain unalienable rights. And among these are life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. Now, those are fundamental rights granted by the Creator. And then the next phrase, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. So the purpose of government, and this was my slogan in our house race, is that rights come from God, not government. The purpose of government is to protect those rights. And so that phrase in itself is a foundational concept that it just seems to be deeper in my heart than it was because of the campaign. I say it many times, but every time I say it, I feel like it goes in deeper. And then you take those fundamental rights, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, and pursuit of happiness is primarily about property. So it's the same message, and a lot of things, not everything, I suppose, but I'm sure there's an exception. But most of the things that we're dealing with in our culture right now would fall under one of those three categories of life, liberty, or property, or pursuit of happiness. And so just understanding each of those issues, I can give you a couple examples from each category.
Well, let's touch on medical freedom and how that applies to those, because you mentioned that early on, and I know you've been a big proponent of medical freedom.
Mm-hmm.
You signed Dr. Mary Bowden's Medical Freedom Pledge, one of three candidates. What specifically does that commit you to as a governor?
Well, I don't have the pledge in front of me right now, but I can tell you what I believe about freedom, and I can tell you where my heart is and why I signed it. Is we watched what happened during COVID. My son-in-law, I mentioned my daughter who passed away. Her husband is a physician in a hospital, and he was told that if he did not take the COVID vaccine shot, if you can call it a vaccine,
right,
that he would lose his job. And it was in the summer, and then he had until September to take it. And I think he and my daughter prayed about it, and he told them, he said, I'm not quitting. Well, first he said, I'm not taking the shot. I'm not quitting. And you'll have to escort me out on the last day. So the word got around town that he was going to be losing his job over this. And so people rallied, and the hospital found an exemption miraculously for him. Yeah. So anyway,
it takes good people standing up. That's for sure.
It does. And so I think that speaks to, some strength and backbone to go against, the powers that be. And so that's what medical freedom means to me. And, it's like he was still dealing with issues like he couldn't prescribe ivermectin or he might lose his license.
Right.
Or pharmacists wouldn't dispense it because they might lose their license.
Yeah.
That's not medical freedom.
No.
We have something called best practice in medicine. I say I'm not a doctor, but as a culture, we have something called a best practice. And doctors are learning things out there in the field on their own. I appreciate all the learning and training that they get, but in most cases, that's not everything. We're always learning new things. And so they figure out something that works and they can tell others, and some of the best advice might come from that.
Right. We saw a lot of good protocols come out of that.
But, with the way this was handled during COVID with top-down protocols and nothing else allowed, that was not medical freedom.
Right.
And people lost their lives because of it, and somebody needs to be held accountable for this.
If we had another public health emergency, what do you think the guardrails should be for protecting individual liberty? I mean, we have this emergency powers issue, and, they're talking about passing some legislation around that. I mean, I know people like to say we didn't shut down, but we certainly did, and a lot of businesses were closed because of it. That couldn't reopen or couldn't afford to reopen. They still had to pay their rent. They still had to, pay their overhead. And how would you manage that, or what kind of guardrails do you think there should be?
Well, the primary guardrails are Constitution.
Right.
I mean, you don't trample on our Constitution just because there's an emergency. And this whole COVID thing was the first time I'm aware of in history that we quarantined healthy people. There was a lot of fear floating around. So we fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me.
Right.
And so that's one thing is our Constitution, but we have to be mindful of that, and we have to understand what our Constitution teaches us. But I think shutting down businesses, mandated vaccines. I mean, this seems so obvious to us, but at the time, the fear was clouding our judgment.
So you'd be good with no mandates?
Absolutely, no mandates. I mean, See, here's the thing. You don't shut down businesses. You don't shut down your economy. That crippled our state. So if people are concerned and they feel like that there's a danger of catching something, then they can make their own decision to isolate, do whatever they want to do. This thing is, there's never been a time that I'm aware of where that kind of, well, I'm sure there have been in history, but it was so, the fear was so strong that people lost their sense of judgment about rights. And
yes, they were very willing to give up rights.
Yeah.
Their rights for perceived protection or safety.
And this gets back to just the people who are in charge, and gets back to the whole issue of draining the swamp and all that. The people that this was promoted. I think we're still going to learn a lot more about it as in the future. But this thing was promoted, and there's still elements of it hanging around in our culture. People that are still living under the fear of it. So we have to just be open-minded and not just take what comes down from above.
Yeah, definitely.
Verbatim.
Definitely. If you were sworn in as governor tomorrow, are there 3 executive actions you'd take, or are there any executive actions you'd take?
Well, I've thought about that a little bit. Honestly, I don't like executive actions on the surface. I mean, there might be, but I'm just not going to say at this point because, I probably have a couple of things written down, but I've been focusing more on the big picture, the long-term thing. I think part of the problem we have in our culture nowadays is that we expect instant results too much. We have a socialist Marxist ideology that has been attacking our culture for decades and decades, and they gradually have been infiltrating. And as long as we have an instant mentality, we're not going to think long-term the way we should. I don't know. I'll give some thought to that one.
Yeah.
I've been asked about that. I think there probably are a couple of things.
Right. Yeah. I don't, there's, how do you contrast yourself, without attacking your opponents? That's not what we do, but what distinguishes your campaign from some of the other candidates? Today's episode is brought to you by Drill It, Inc., a locally owned directional drilling company based right here in central Iowa. If you need underground utilities installed, electric, water, sewer, fiber, or geothermal, Drill It has over 20 years of experience handling everything from residential installs to complex commercial projects. What I like about Drill It is you work directly with the owner from start to finish, so the job gets done right. Learn more at drillitinc.com.
Well, I already talked about my experience. I think a broad range of different kinds of experience. Pastoring for 45 years, for instance. I mean, I've actually pastored a church. I've actually counseled people and worked with people face to face for 45 years. And when you do that, and people from all walks of life, you help them understand who Jesus is. You baptize them. You do their weddings. You dedicate their babies, and then help them through tough times as they're building their businesses or whatever, and pray with them on all those things, and then sometimes bury their loved ones. That gives you a very broad perspective when it comes to how people live in the real world. And government has a tendency to lose a perspective on that. So I think that is a big one. I've already mentioned, the blue collar work I did, the home building, real estate development, the pro-life work, the grassroots experience I've had. And I like to break grassroots experience out as a separate item on that question, because there was a question asked in one of our forums, and the answer, they outline your grassroots experience was one of the questions. And I listened to the other people respond to the question, and none of them had any grassroots experience other than maybe their business experience. And
right.
So they just deflected to that, which is sort of like grassroots, but I'm talking about grassroots political, experience. I've been a county chair. I've organized caucuses. I've chaired county conventions. I've been to all the conventions. I've been on committees for state level, all the way to the national level, to the national convention. So I understand this system. I understand the importance of grassroots, and that if we need to preserve that in Iowa. And I think I get it for sure on a greater level because of my experience, that how important the grassroots concept is in Iowa.
It's incredibly important.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm now the chair of the Dallas County Republican Party, and our main focus is how do we build those neighbor to neighbor networks.
Yeah.
How do we build our precincts and get in there and really be able to activate Republicans when we need them for a special election or a city council election or a school board election. And we really haven't done that in the past, So the grassroots and founding Iowans for Freedom and bringing hundreds of people to the Capitol and activating people to stand for our freedoms, that's really made me understand how important the grassroots are. Mm-hmm. It's getting individuals to understand, wow, we got to wake up and we got to take a part in this movement. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, if you just remain apathetic, you're going to get the same thing over and over, and your freedoms are going to be gone.
Yeah, and I think that all ties into the whole first in the nation thing as well. As long as we can keep a strong grassroots representation with the first with the caucus, the Iowa caucuses, and I've managed, and you've just come through a caucus, and I've organized caucuses, and we understand how difficult it is, and it's never perfect.
Right.
There's all kinds, but even as imperfect as it is, it's pretty amazing how it all comes together, and it gets people involved, and we'd like to see more people involved. But boy, and it's a battle sometimes, but as a Republican Party, we have held that standard. The Democrat Party, the last couple of cycles, really dropped the ball on the caucuses, and their caucuses have, as I understand it, I've never been to one, but is held differently. They operate differently than how the Republicans do it, and it seems to be pretty confusing.
Yeah,
almost like mass chaos, and so and unable to get the results turned in and things like that. So we're holding up the standard, I think, as a national standard for grassroots activism, and that's what keeps us at that position of being first in the nation. And so I think we have an opportunity here to continue that and to be an example to the nation when it comes to, grassroots activism, and because it's disappearing out there. There's a war against it. There's a war to centralize everything, and we need to decentralize. I believe in decentralization as a principle.
Smaller government.
Right.
Yeah, definitely. We had an amazing convention. Big thanks to your son for that. I mean, he was the caucus to convention chair, and he stepped up. I made a joke. I told him we were either going to get sick of each other or become best friends. He said he thought it was the second one. I'll check back in with him in a month or two. But
well, he's made some positive comments. He's enjoying it.
He is just amazing. But we had our convention ran really like clockwork. I mean, we started at 9, we were done at 12:30. We had, we elected all our delegates. We had all sorts of people speak, candidates speak, our junior delegates. They had a great time. They presented their 3 planks and debated them. And it was a very positive atmosphere and a great outcome. So, I'm learning as we go too, and learning more about the Republican Party and the caucus and convention, and now I'll go on to districts, and it's interesting. It's and it's really powerful seeing all the people that are stepping up. that want to volunteer and want to take a little piece of the mission, and to help bring the mission forward.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned the things that set me apart. I think we were on that list, right?
Right. We'll meander. We'll get there.
We'll meander. But so I mentioned the broad experience of the different things I've done.
Right.
I mentioned the grassroots experience. I think another one is the fact that I got into this race first. That's something that sets me apart. That's a big issue. And we were talking before we started recording here, something about beating Rob Sand.
Right.
And one of the things I've noticed in 300 plus meetings around the state, there is a significant number of people out there who are just, tired of the establishment, and they've got fed up and, mistrust. And, whether that's founded or unfounded is not my point. I'm not trying to point fingers at anybody or, because establishment is a term that means different things to different people. So I'm not trying to point fingers, but what I'm saying is those people are out there. And so if they stay home, I'm talking about people that voted Republican last time around. And if those people get frustrated and stay home, or if those people happen to be swing voters who decide maybe they'll vote for Rob Sand, in November, then we've got a problem. But Iowa's a red state, and if we can turn out our people and keep them on board for our vision, then we're going to win this election. And so that's something that's very, very important. And I think when it comes to convincing people that that a candidate won't be controlled by the establishment, I'm the one that can do that, because I was the only candidate that got in this race before Governor Reynolds said she wasn't going to run. So, and not to trash her, that's not the point here. The point is that I proved by doing that I am willing to go against the person that many people consider to be the establishment. And so I think that gives me a huge advantage in convincing these people, hey, let's stay on board. I'm not an establishment guy. I won't be controlled by the establishment. And that's one of the promises I've been making around the state, is that I will not be bought. Government's not for sale. A lot of people have that concern, and so I think that's one of the things that not an establishment person, and I got in the race first and everyone else got in afterwards. And I think another point is that I've researched this, and I can't find any evidence of anybody else endorsing President Trump in 24 except me. And if you like President Trump, that's a positive. If you don't, that's a negative. But the point is, back when they were trying to throw him in jail in 2024, his state chair came to me and said, would you endorse President Trump in 24? And I said, absolutely. And one of the reasons I did that, first off, I just believe God has called this man for this purpose and time. Not that he's a perfect man. I don't believe anybody's perfect. None of us are. But the thing that came to my mind when I was asked that question about endorsing him was this: how can you say you support election integrity if you're willing to sweep under the rug the fact that his election was stolen, and let's just go with somebody else? And because I think the evidence is pretty clear that there was a massive amount of cheating in the 2020 election. And so that was where I'm at on this issue. So those are four issues, broad range of experience, grassroots experience, first in the race, and supporting President Trump, when most people thought they didn't want to associate with him. Those are four things that set me apart.
Yeah. And when I think about the governor race, and I think about Rob Sand, I sometimes wonder, okay, so you have strong conservative values, constitutionalist, very God-fearing, which is for the primary, I think is really important, to bring people out and to vote in the primary. Now, in a general election where you have this guy who's trying to appear to be more conservative or more middle of the road, and he's kind of appealing to some of the independents and maybe some of the soft Republicans even. How do you, if you won the primary, how do you compete there? I mean, do you think people are concerned, oh man, we've got this guy Brad Sherman, who's, I think sometimes people don't want to be held to higher values. You know what I mean? I don't know if that makes sense, but it's like the contrast of the guy who always wants to do the right thing versus the guy that's going to let me do some of the stuff that, is not so right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, the cultural idea of that lackadaisy, almost believing in nothing and just wanting to be able to do whatever I want,
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but
I'm not articulating it well. But
no, I understand it though. I think that's been a perpetual issue,
right?
And we've overcome that in the past by the fact that our state is trending more red, more conservative,
right?
And that was my point about turning out the voters and convincing them that it won't be same old,
right?
It's not going to be just controlled by the establishment machine. I will definitely think for myself and do the right thing. I don't know. I haven't run into hardly anybody that says, when you say we need to do the right thing, that disagree with that. And so I think, but the point you're making is, like I said, it's been there a long time, and we can overcome that if we simply turn our people out and encourage them that we're going to continue with the vision that they had that caused them to vote President Trump in, the vision that caused them to vote in Governor Reynolds and Republicans in the past. People are just feeling like, many people are feeling like Republicans have been in charge so long, and then we've got this issue and that issue. Well, we have to explain it to them. And the other thing I think is that just unpacking Rob Sand's baggage. I mean, I think his name is a fitting thing because sand is not a solid foundation. And I've made the quip in the past that we can't build our house on the sand,
Yeah.
But I don't have anything against Rob Sand as a person, but I do know that he is kind of like shifting sand.
Yeah.
And I remember the video I saw a while back of him being asked a question, how many genders are there?
Oh, yeah.
And I've never seen anybody dance like the guy danced. I mean, it's like he couldn't answer the question. He avoided it twice. And the third time around, when the guy brought him back to it, he finally said, well, I think there's two, but if there's more, so it was so obvious what it was. He's trying to play both sides of the middle. He didn't want to offend his left-wing base who believes there's, 40 or 50 genders or however many.
Right.
But at the same time, he knew he needed to appeal to the conservative. You could just see the wheels turning. So this guy was willing to say whatever needed to be said to try to appeal to voters. And I think people appreciate somebody that has some conviction.
Right.
And that's where I'm at because I have convictions. Now, I don't know everything. I guarantee you I don't know everything. And I'm always willing to learn and find out where I'm wrong and make adjustments, admit mistakes. I think that's essential. Mike Huckabee told me when I told him I was running for governor, he said the most dangerous person in the room is the guy that doesn't know that he doesn't know. And so, but at the same time, you have to have your core values and that those things won't change.
Right.
And if you don't have that, you're just going to be, again, shifting sand.
Yeah.
That's what people are tired of. I found out that people, and I just had a conversation with a supporter the other day who's upset at one of my positions. And I explained it to him the best I could. So this is why I believe that. And he ended up, he's still on the fence, I guess, at this point. But he was very respectful and said, well, I really appreciate that. And he goes, if I end up not supporting you, he goes, I just want you to know I won't talk bad about you. He goes, I think you're a good man, So I just think, you have to, in a cordial way and in a reasonable way, make your case for why you believe what you believe.
Yeah. What's been your favorite part of the campaign?
Just meeting people.
Yeah.
I mean, we get tired sometimes but as soon as you get out and start talking to people and discussing issues, I mean, there's an energy that comes from that that's hard to explain. And I mentioned earlier about, going through some tough times with my daughter's passing and all that. It gives you a focus on eternity. And I find a great peace in the whole idea of surrender, that this is not about me, not about my ambition or my ego. I'm old enough that I'm not looking for another career, don't want another career. But I made a conscious decision at one point that if I look at this, let's just say, for example, if if I win this election and serve 2 terms, then I've committed 10 years of my life to this. Basically 2 years of campaigning and 2 terms, that would be 10 years. And I'm willing to do that. And those are 10 years that are absolutely committed to service. And it's going to be hard work the whole time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, but I see that as important. I see it from my children, grandchildren, and their children's futures, because I've personally witnessed over 40 some years how our freedoms are being destroyed, the foundations are being eroded, and we absolutely have to get that back. We're in a war, Oliver. We're in a war. And many people don't seem to get it, that we're literally in a war for the freedoms of our nation, and it's very concerning to me.
I learned that pretty quickly, that it's an everyday battle,
Mm-hmm.
And that whole idea of surrender. I mean, I remember, going to the Capitol and standing against mandates and doing all those things. I thought, okay, well, once I get this done, I can go back to my real life, back to actually making money and building things and doing the important things I thought were important. But it just kept being one more thing and one more thing and one more thing. And finally, I just surrendered to, it's a lifelong battle.
Mm-hmm.
And we surrender to, I guess, the mission, to defend freedom and to fight for freedom and whatever else. And there is some sort of peace in that.
Mm-hmm.
You just think, okay, this is just the way it's going to be. And I'm going to do my best no matter what, but I'm going to continue standing for that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I do appreciate that about you, for sure.
Well, I mean, the thought crosses my mind, I could probably get by without personally feeling a loss of freedom. I could just I like to work in my shop. I build things in my shop. I'm, a hobby gunsmith. I like to build custom revolvers. It's just my hobby. And I love target shooting and just, long range shooting. It's just fun. I enjoy it.
Right.
And how selfish would it be of me just to say, forget all this freedom business. I'll just, as long as it's okay with me, as long as I get by, then I'm not going to worry about it.
Right.
But I can't do that.
Yeah.
I feel like it's a choice to enlist in the service, to our state and to our country.
I think we all know that campaigning, it's a family endeavor. How has your family support been important to you? How is that going with, your family being involved in your campaign?
Well, it's been tremendous. Our kids all support us. Of course, Benjamin. My other son lives over between Indianola and Des Moines, and he's a member of the Central Committee over there. And then my daughter helps us a lot at the church and supports us. She lives in Iowa City. Now, my wife's amazing. I always refer to her as my secret weapon. She's
right.
She's just amazing, and she's a hard worker. She's smart. She does a good job. I mentioned those signatures that we turned in, 9,000. That was her thing. She had some help with volunteers, of course, but boy, she took that on and she got that done. And she does the scheduling, and she goes with me just about everywhere we go. In fact, she's with me on this trip, but I dropped her off at the mall before I came here. But yeah, we're working together constantly. So I've got total support from my family. So.
Yeah, she gave up her birthday, I think. Let's see. It was an Iowa Faith and Freedom event at Gary and Shelley Pitt's place. Mm-hmm. And it was a candidate forum. Mm-hmm. And then at some point it was announced that it was your wife's birthday. And she was spending it there and, just dedicated definitely to the cause. Some wives might have wanted that day with you by themselves. Yeah. No, that's awesome. So is there anything else you'd like to discuss before we finish up?
Well, it seems like there was one of those things we were talking about. I was trying to keep it in my mind, but it slips my mind now. But But I just always appreciate the opportunity to have this conversational type of interview, because things come out that normally don't come out. I think people appreciate just hearing people speak off the cuff. No notes, just good questions, and you always ask the really good questions.
I appreciate that.
Yeah,
I really enjoyed having you on the first time, and I really am glad to follow up. And tomorrow we're going to have lunch with my men's group, and they're excited to hear from you again and see how your campaign's going. And tonight we've got ICI's event, the Aaron Seery.
Mm-hmm.
And this will come out after the event, so I can say something about it. But that guy's amazing. That's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I'm anxious to
Vaccines, Amen is his book. Have you seen his book?
No, I haven't.
Let me see if I got it. I do. Let me grab it. Yeah, that's his book, Vaccine, Amen.
Okay.
So you'll get a copy tonight, and it'll be signed.
Okay.
That's part of the deal. But I just listened to him on Rogan too, and the guy is amazing. I mean, I think he's worked with Children's Health Defense, and I think he's got about 40 attorneys on his staff, and they have done the deep dive into the childhood vaccine schedule, and they've had to litigate it. I mean, he did a deposition of one of the vaccinologist gurus for 9 hours and was just appalled at the lack of science, real science going on. So, and I think he wrote a book called Vaxxed Unvaxxed, where they did some comparisons, but it really interesting, really powerful, because he really digs into how much of a religion that's become kind of surrounding that. So,
well, that does remind me of one of the issues that I was going to mention.
Sure.
The whole issue with COVID and how we shut down, we were talking about the emergency powers of the governor.
Mm-hmm.
And how there's a bill right now going through the House and the Senate. I'm not sure where it's at in the process at this point. But Representative Steve Bradley told me just the other day that he said that was your bill that's tweaked just a little bit. So that was a bill that I filed in the House. Actually, I'm going to give Sandy Salmon credit for getting the bill out there, and then I simply filed the companion bill in the House. But the point is, that's a bill that I would be happy to sign as governor, and it's a bill that would cut back the emergency powers of the governor in a situation like COVID, so that it would only have one declaration of emergency, and after that, you have to go to the legislature to extend it. And so that's one of the things that happened during COVID. This emergency was extended multiple times. I don't remember how many. But after 60 days or whatever the time period might be, it's not an emergency anymore. That doesn't mean it isn't important. But if we need to keep certain powers in place, then that needs to be done by more heads than one.
Right.
And so the governor's office and the governor doesn't need to be a dictator. Now, I think that one-time emergency power is necessary because things happen sometimes, and you don't have time to go to get a council of people together, and so that's the executive branch. I think that's a good thing. But after 60 days, that's plenty of time to call people together and say, let's get our heads together, and what's going to be the next step after these 60 days? Let's be watching this, and so that relates to the whole thing with the vaccine, like you're talking about right now, and that. It just came back to mind as you brought that up. So,
well, yeah. And now I'm thinking about some of the other issues. It's the property tax issue.
Mm-hmm.
That's huge. And what are your thoughts on that? I know I think the governor had a bill, the Senate had a bill, the House had a bill, and I don't know exactly where they're at. But do you have ideas on how we could ease that burden on the taxpayer?
Well, I've got a sheet, and I've looked at it. It's a 3-column sheet that takes each of the 3 versions,
okay,
and kind of compares them. There's different points. I didn't see anything that looked world changing on any of them. There's probably some good ideas there, but I think the biggest thing we need to do for property taxes is get absolute transparency in spending,
right?
Because if we had a system now, I always make a plug for Abigail Moss. I really believe in the ideas that she's been promoting as a state auditor. And I've said this before, if we had a real estate auditor, we wouldn't need Doge.
Right.
Because that's the auditor's job. But her ideas are to put in a statewide software system where all the taxing entities are on the same system so that their data can communicate with each other. Those it can be collected. So the citizens can click online, find out where money's being spent, who spent it, who authorized it, what it's being spent on, et cetera. If we had that kind of transparency, then the people themselves would take care of business. The people themselves would vote in the people that will manage money properly and vote out the ones that don't. And it would be huge.
Right.
And then, I think that's the first and most important step. I think another thing when it comes to property taxes, and these are now that's not a super long-term vision. That's something that can be put in place relatively quickly. But a longer-term vision, I think, is a population growth. We need to get population growing again in our state. That's why, people talk about we don't have population, we don't have workforce, people leave the state, whatever. Well, there's lots of reasons for that. One of them is when you kill 60, 70 million babies, and then you wonder why you don't have a population growth. That's an issue. And so that's why I'm strongly pro-life. And we need to encourage families and then get the rural communities rebuilt. And there's a lot, no simple fix for that. But there are some things that we can do to start rebuilding rural Iowa, get family farms operating again instead of make it possible again for farmers to make a living, get rid of regulations so that the playing field is level for people that want to have their own farms. I think we need to fix our regulations so that people that grow food can sell to their neighbors without too much regulation, and address the high cancer rates that way. I think
I was going to mention that because that's another big thing is the high cancer rates in Iowa.
So all these things are sort of dovetailed together. There's no one issue that stands alone. In most cases, one thing affects the other. I would like to see Iowa become a state where we have a network of small modular reactors, SMRs,
right?
A decentralized power source, so that we are completely independent. And I think we could make electricity way cheaper than it is.
Where are we at on that? I mean, on the technology and where are we at?
Well, it depends on who you look, but I've talked to the Nuclear Energy Institute people a couple of times. I've been to at least one seminar on this. There are several different designs out there. Some of these designs will actually burn the spent fuel that is stored that nobody knows what to do with, what we call nuclear waste, but it's really just slightly used nuclear fuel. And they can burn this down to a much safer level. And we got enough of that fuel for 200 years. It's already sitting there,
Right.
And so these small reactors can do that. They don't need water for cooling. Water is a big issue in our state. We don't have enough water.
So what's holding that back? Are there regulations that are holding that back?
Well, I'm still figuring that out, but I think federal regulations would be one of the hurdles. I think another one is just to make sure the designs are ready to go.
Right.
But these designs are there. I think if we start asking for them and say we want this, then these and make some deals with these companies, I think they can accelerate and get these things online going, because there's molten salt reactors is one that comes to mind. I forget the names of some of the others, but the fact that they're smaller and modular means they're produced off-site. They can be hauled in. We've been doing this for decades. We have these in aircraft carriers and submarines.
Oh, sure.
We've been doing this for forever. We can do this. And so I'd like to see Iowa lead the nation in establishing this kind of a power grid. And, because these things work 24/7, 365. You don't, like the wind and solar, they don't work when the wind's not blowing and the sun's not shining. And then we have to have backup on top of that. And there's all kinds
and you mentioned, I remember something comes to mind. We were at a conference together, like the conservative renewable energy conference at the World Food Prize Center,
right,
with former Governor Branstad, or Ambassador Branstad. And there was a economist who was talking about wind energy. And you asked him about if it wasn't subsidized, would he still be recommending it? And I was shocked. He said no, because he said, but it is, so let's keep doing it.
Yeah.
But you had that question. We were sitting at the same table even, and that's something that I was thinking about too. Well, it was like 85% subsidized or something, and he was his part of the whole deal was the wind energy, and what he said was, yeah, if it wasn't subsidized, no, I wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah, I remember that now that you mention it. And I remember also asking about the CO2 sequestration at that meeting. And I made the point in that meeting that a certain scientist in our state, one of the top scientists, told me that that there's nothing humans can do to create enough CO2 that's going to hurt our atmosphere. But he can't say that or he would lose his job.
Right.
And the whole place, there was a gasp in the room when I said that.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people realize that now, but back then that was really stepping out there to say there's nothing wrong with CO2. CO2 simply makes our plants, grow better. But I mean, I believe in clean air and taking care of the environment, strongly believe in that. But CO2 is not the problem. CO2 makes plants grow faster, and the more they grow, the more oxygen they produce. It's just it's a self-balancing system. I mean, God had this figured out a long time ago.
Right.
But somebody figured out how to make CO2 bad, and now we can use it to sell carbon credits and make a few people very rich. And at the same time, we'll say we're going to go bury it in the ground, but really we're just going to use it for enhanced oil recovery and use it as a product, as a commodity. So there's so much scam going on around CO2 that it's shocking, and we just need to educate the public on this.
Yeah. What do you think about what's going on with Iran? Just off topic, national, international issues.
Yeah. Well, when I woke up on that Saturday morning early, couldn't sleep, got up, and I pulled my phone up and I saw what was going on. And I felt very strongly I should just make a statement. So I made a statement that I support President Trump in what he's doing in Iran. And this is not initiating a war. It's dealing with a war that was initiated a long time ago. These people have said very clearly that they're out to destroy our nation. They want to overtake and overthrow us. And if they get a nuclear weapon, they will use it without hesitation. And so I made my statement.
Yeah.
And then people accused me of blindly following President Trump or whatever. And I made a response letter. It's out there in the public. And I said, well, I don't blindly follow any human leader because I know that all humans are flawed. We hate war. We need to pray for a quick resolution to this action. But I think the thing that most people don't realize is how serious this is. We can't just continue to sit back. And then, of course, some people are saying, well, it's not constitutional because there was no declaration of war. And I've looked at Article 1, Section 8, the Constitution of the War Powers authority for Congress. They have the authority to declare war, but in Article 1. But in Article 2, the executive has the authority to protect our nation as well. So it's not a clear-cut issue. The Office of what do they call it? Office of Legal Counsel, OLC, has reviewed this many times, and many presidents have come to this conclusion that they don't need a declaration of war from Congress to do certain things. Congress can make that declaration. But another issue that we don't seem to realize is that Congress has been infiltrated by some communists and leftists. And if we're to try to go do something that requires security and secrecy, you can't go to Congress because it will leak. So those are just a few concepts. How those all plug in together and work is something that most of us probably think we understand, but we can't, because there are details behind the scenes that we may never know. And we have to trust leadership in that to some degree, and that's what's going on.
And it's difficult. They had just killed like 40,000 protesters,
Exactly.
And I had a friend that had been texting me for a month, sending me videos, and his girlfriend's family was there and saying, we need to do something about this. And, and then that you have the way that they treat their women, and, they have to be covered. They have to, they'll get, just like cattle. And it was interesting seeing some women step up and say they were dancing in the streets, and really, the whole liberation thing was important. But I don't know. I think that part of it could be good, that we could, hopefully they'll get things straightened out and moving forward and everything. But
yeah, people say, well, Trump ran on no new wars. And well, I get that, but I don't think anybody ever thought he was talking about staying silent when we're under attack.
Right.
And so that's how I see this. And, another person was raising so I don't want to have to tell somebody that their loved one is not coming home. Well, that is horrible. We hate that.
Yeah.
But those 40,000 people that were killed in the streets in Iran, those were somebody's loved ones as well.
Yeah.
And so there's a bigger picture here. My wife's uncle married an Iranian woman who was whose father worked with the Shah before he was deposed by this regime that's there now. And so Iran used to be a very free Western-style nation until they took over. And I remember when that, back in 79, when that took over, and then I remember the hostages that were held for 444 days, and we never would have got them back. Jimmy Carter was a complete failure on that. And then the very day that Ronald Reagan took office, they released those hostages. Why? Because they knew he wasn't kidding around.
Right.
And you, at some point, you have to show some strength, or evil just continues in this world. And that's all that is an evil regime. And that's why I appreciate President Trump. He's got a backbone.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, world leaders recognize that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I want to thank you for joining us. Is there anything you want to leave people with, where they can reach you, or final thoughts? Or
Well, our website, shermanforiowa.com. You can go there, learn about our campaign. You can sign up for newsletters. You can sign up as a volunteer. You can see about the people that have endorsed us. We've got several legislators that have endorsed our campaign. We got people that used to work, like Sam Clovis used to work for the Trump administration. Jim Garlow, who's an internationally known minister, who wrote the book Well Versed and Reversed. He's endorsed our campaign. And so, there's a lot of information there that I hope people will do. The news interviews are there, links. We should probably get a link to this one on there as well.
Right. That'd be great.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if it's on there from last time or not. So
sure.
Keeping all this stuff updated is not my personal job, but we'll make sure we get it done. So ShermanForIowa.com. We sure appreciate people taking a look at our campaign. We're going to beat Rob Sand, and that's don't worry about that.
Yeah, he has to be beaten. Well, I look forward to seeing you tonight and tomorrow at lunch and tomorrow night. We're gonna even get to know each other a little better over the next few days. So thanks so much for joining us. God bless you, and we look forward to hearing more from you on the campaign trail.
All right, great being with you.
Yeah, all right.